to the Tilden Hotel. Jason Webb, the general manager, and has been for 3 years.
Yeah, a little over 3 years.
Yeah. And Jason, originally from Iowa. We share wrestling in common. We've got plans to wrestle each other at some point here. And constantly talking about diets and nutrition and exercise. It's been a lot of fun bringing the Tilden to where it is today with you, especially putting in the art, exhibits, the community, and the staff here I know loves you. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to be on this with me, Jason.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time too.
Yeah, really appreciate it. So Jason, I just want to start with a little bit of spiritual grounding, I know that your parents are really close to you, and you've introduced me to them before, met them here at the Tilden. And I know wrestling was central to your growing up. And maybe all wrestlers have that same kind of relationship with their fathers, but maybe you just talk a little bit about growing up in Iowa and, how you found your place and how your spirituality has evolved a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Was born in Iowa, pretty much raised in Iowa. My family going back is a lot of pastors, my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my dad, so that was kind of where a lot of the spirituality came from. United Methodist Church, ironically, next door, United Methodist Church there at Glide. So, and then, the Midwestern work ethic too. There's a lot of that in there. That's how my family was. Get up, get busy, which served me well in wrestling too, right? You get up at 5 a.m, go hit the weight room, and then go to school all day, and then practice after school, homework, and a lot of church mixed in. So that was my upbringing, good school districts. My relationship with my parents was really good. Because of being a pastor, my dad had flexibility, so he was always at wrestling meets, making sure I got to practice. My mom's a teacher, and then was also very active in the church. So grew up that way. And then as far as the evolution, I was actually elected to the general conference for the United Methodist Church, and got to see kind of almost the underbelly, if you will, of kind of how churches make up what they're going to present to the world. And it's almost like once you see the sausage, how it's made, then you become a vegetarian. So that was kind of a little bit of an exit out of organized, and then how am I going to fit? So took some courses actually in comparative religions, read a lot of books about other religions, and kind of carved out my own view of what spirituality is. I think it's more of a worldview at this point than maybe just a traditional Christian upbringing.
Yeah.
So I think that's, you and I have some of that in common as well. I know you've studied quite a few religions, and I take pieces of different ones, and that makes sense, and
Yeah. Is there a daily practice that you have, or weekly, or?
I pray a lot.
Yeah.
Meditate. I've been doing a lot more of that over the last, say, 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And then for me, I tie into all that is spiritual in the outdoors a lot. So getting out, I can just stare at the ocean or be in the woods or whatever, and that grounds me a lot.
Yeah. And your wife being a scientist, how does that factor into?
Yeah, she has a different view of I would say religion in general.
Yeah.
However, I think she's actually a pretty spiritual person. I don't know that she would agree with me, but she's very soulful, and I think that her view of how that works is maybe different, but they don't have to be in opposition to each other, and actually having my father be as open as he is, and they've had conversations together, you know, and it's like, wow, this is fascinating. And it's actually helped her, I think, you know, because like that's her question. Like, you're a smart guy. How do you, you know, reconcile these two differences or whatever?
Yeah.
And just having them sit down and be able to have that open relationship is really cool.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually helped both of them a little bit, see where they're coming from and think deeply about their beliefs. Yeah. You have a lot of scientists in your family too.
That's right. That's right. I was thinking a little bit about my dad gaining a lot of spirituality in the last couple of years.
Yep.
You know, when you run out of answers, you know, the questions start, and it can be unsettling, I guess, you know. And, he's definitely run into the end of answers, you know, lately with my mom's health. But your parents are both healthy?
Pretty healthy.
That's good.
Yeah.
And how's the father-in-law doing?
Much better.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yep. He's it scared him, and they found out that they kind of figured out that it is basically a heart murmur type situation that's getting worse as he gets older, kind of an arrhythmia. And it scared him enough, though, that I think he's, you know, he's only a few weeks into it, but he's like, I'm not eating that. I'm going for walks. I'm doing this. I think it,
Yeah.
you know, and frankly, it's made him a little nicer. He's, like,
To you or to everybody?
to everybody. No, to me, he and I have always been great. Actually, I'm lucky. My in-laws are great. Our relationship's good, but he, you know, he had gotten kind of cranky for a while, getting older and stuff. And I think, well, start running out of answers also when the answer you don't want to see is right in front of you.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you, maybe you change a little bit there too.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, that's not the answer I like, you know? So. Yeah.
When you pray or meditate, is there a certain way or place that you like to do it?
If I, you know, it's not realistic that I always get out in the woods, but often I'll just lay in bed,
Yeah.
you know, not a lot of distractions,
Yeah.
and just kind of go into a zone depending on what I think I need at the moment, whether it's just meditating and trying to bring it to nothing, or if it's, you know, tying into energy, trying to get, you know,
Yeah.
if that's what I need. Try to think about that.
Yeah.
And then always make sure there's a lot for others in there. Learned that a lot from my grandmother as she got older and answers were running out. And she was very much into the religion aspect of it. She was a, you know, preacher's wife and took that to that was like her. That was her identity.
Yeah.
And as she got older, there was a lot of things that the church she didn't agree with. And interestingly, then she kind of flipped to the more spiritual side of it. And like I witnessed her, like when she met my mother-in-law, for example, they had never met. And just as soon as they met and my grandmother looked at her and stuff, she was like, my mother-in-law just burst into tears and was like, you were the one praying for me. And it was like super powerful, you know?
Wow.
So I think my grandmother actually has a lot to do with how like my spirituality formed later in her life. Like it's almost like I could be laying in bed doing the meditating or doing praying or whatever, and you could just feel her. And then like I had on more than one occasion, she'd be like, that was really cool. And you're like, what? Like she knew, you know?
Yeah.
It was amazing. She could like tap into an energy that I had never experienced before.
Was this after your grandfather passed away?
It was. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep. And she had lived in a retirement type home that had varying degrees of support based on what you needed. And so they had been in the needing the most support when my grandfather was alive and had had his strokes and stuff. And then she moved back to a little less of a, oversight, so to speak. And then she kind of became the person in the entire retirement community to like make it a point to make somebody's day better, or the staff there. She would be like, tell me about your life, tell me about you, and then the staff would come to her on their off hours and be like, I've got this thing going on at home, and she'd talk to them, and it was almost like she became almost like a spiritual healer / psychologist.
Yeah.
She was an awesome lady.
So she passed away?
She did, yep. It's been almost 8 years now, because we flew Violet out there when Violet was like 4 months old or something, and Violet was actually baptized in Iowa with my grandma there, because my grandma wanted to meet her, and then she passed away pretty shortly after.
Wow.
That. So.
How old was she?
Almost 90.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, almost 90.
Wow.
Yep.
That's one of the things in my life. I've always felt a deep connection to all four of my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
I was really lucky to grow up with all four, and that's actually like a Confucian, ancestral worship's like part of Chinese culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were definitely my North Star, and still are,
Mm-hmm.
Just a way,
Mm-hmm.
a way to connect to it all, I guess, It's amazing when people at that age can have so much hope and direction,
Mm-hmm.
because it's easily lost, I think, right?
Yep. And she had gone through that. Like when my grandfather died, there was a time period there where it was like, do I want to do this anymore?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
he was her life for so long.
Yeah.
And relearning how to do bills, because she hadn't done that part of that. And, not going to church as much and doing all of these things. And like, it just kind of made her, put her into a state of what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And what is that going to look like, And then she made a decision. Like, I still have worth,
Do you see any shifting in her health, her daily health, her patterns?
It was pretty poor.
Yeah.
Right after he had died.
Yeah.
And then she had problems, off and on throughout, but she got healthier for sure. Just from attitude. She was a musician, a really, really good musician. Probably the best piano player I've ever seen. And so she dove back into that for a while.
Yeah.
Which really helped her out too, both mentally and got her up, got her blood flowing.
Yeah.
And then spiritually too,
You've been making some changes lately. Your health.
I have.
Holistic health.
Yep.
Anything you want to talk about? What's easiest? What's going well? What's working? What's not working?
Yeah. Sugar's my vice. So, I made it all the way through August with only 2 days in August over the 20 grams of sugar.
Nice.
Of added sugar. So, and the first day of that, I was really happy. The second time I did it, not so much. I actually could tell a difference.
Yeah.
And so it's been good. Dropped a few pounds, feel better.
Yeah.
Sleep better.
Wow.
And that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll figure out what the next thing is after I get maybe another month under my belt of this.
I think as a wrestler, until I gave up sugar, in July, I was always hungry.
Yeah.
I mean, just always hungry. Even I'd eat a bunch and I'd still be hungry.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I think that metabolism gets messed up from what we put ourselves through back then.
Or maybe it's our minds.
Yeah.
And scarcity. I always think we got to put something away for later, like
Right.
a squirrel or something, you know.
Body definitely is affected by the insulin for sure.
Well, that I think is the real explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just crave it. You hit that little bit of sugar and it's like, where's the next piece of food? Where's the next
Yeah.
piece of food? Yeah. Yeah.
How about on the workout side?
Yeah, I've not as much workout as I want, but I've been doing a lot more walks in the evenings.
Yeah.
Doing some jogging. There's a couch potato to 5K. I'm working on that.
Nice.
I'm probably closer to couch potato than 5K right now. But basically, it's like an interval training, and I found it online.
Cool.
Which kind of, I also ran track when I was
Yeah, I
in
remember
high
that.
school, so it kind of brings me back to interval training on a much easier
Yeah.
level. But so I'm doing that. That'll be good.
I think it's got to be easy. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I don't think it's about going back to wrestling days
No.
again. You know?
And you've seen me. Like, I have to force myself to slow down a little bit, or
Yeah.
I'll go hurt myself.
Right, right.
Sometimes my brain forgets that I'm older.
Well, I definitely want, you've been so integral, Jason, into the Tenderloin community here. I mean, you know a lot of people now that are, you know, huge believers in the Tilden, in this experiment of trying to connect Union Square and the Tenderloin, right?
Yep.
And I have to say, you've done an incredible job with it, you know. People trust you here, you know. From Jesse, you know, our poet in residence, to Han Min, you know, who's dedicated his life to community, wildflowers. And he and I did a podcast last week, actually, in his house, which we're heading to later,
Yep.
to look at that community map that I made. You know, maybe just describe a little bit of what the last 3 years has meant to you, and you know, how it's impacted you. I think I'd be
Yeah.
curious with that.
Sure. Part of what drew me to Point and to this job, having worked with Carlene before and then meeting you during that process, was the sense of community. Far too often it's easy to just get stuck in your office staring at numbers all day and kind of lose sight of what happens outside of those doors. And so I feel like, you know, this particular hotel in particular and where it's located, being kind of a bridge between Union Square and the Tenderloin, there's a lot of opportunities. And at first it wasn't easy. You know, the people in the Tenderloin are very much, it can be us against them. And I'm sure for good reason over the years. You know, through their experiences, that's where they are. And so it took a little bit, you know, community events, make a few friends, get introduced, and they really they look at you from a side eye until they find out if you're genuine or not. So, and it's taken a few years to get there, you know.
Yeah.
But it really feels good to make those connections. And then it ties into our guests too, right? Because then they see that same genuine care for the neighborhood and for themselves. They know we're going to take care of them the same way we take care of the neighborhood. And yeah, the in particular, the art has been the big tie-in to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's been super successful, and it's really helped meet some awesome people and just create a good vibe.
Yeah. Tell the audience maybe a little bit about what Tilden Tuesdays are.
Yeah.
You know, and what kind of artists you've had there, how you found these artists. You know. Yeah.
So every other month we do a new artist, and we do a big event open to the public, and we get between 150 and 200 people now, and I think a testament to the neighborhood and people really buying in is that we started with maybe 25 people.
Yeah.
And so we get a lot of repeats, which is great. Word of mouth on the artists. All the artists are local. we require them to reside in San Francisco and as close to the hotel as possible. So many of them have been Tenderloin artists. Most of them have. And some have been with Hospitality House. We've had art students. We've had, various types of artists too. We try to mix it up. So we've had everything from photographers to mixed media, which is great. Gives a different vibe to the lobby each time and to the events. And they sell their work, and 100% of the proceeds goes directly to them. We don't take any. And so we're kind of, I'd give them some space, tell them to go with it. And then we purchase a piece of art and keep it as part of our permanent collection. And I'm actually meeting with Hospitality House soon. I think we're going to do one whole wall with various of their artists here coming up soon.
Wow.
Which would be great.
Jason, tell us a little more about, pick a person maybe that's the most surprising person you've met in the Tenderloin, it could be someone that you see regularly or not, but, and I'll think of one too. And if you need more time, I'll go ahead with mine.
You start.
All right. So, two of the people that I'll not soon forget from our Wildflowers seminar, which made me feel totally comfortable in the Tenderloin, were Yuki and Sue. And Yuki commented on the first poetry reading called Fugitive by Jesse Johnson, who's a very talented poet. He's got 2 paintings and poems that you've put up here in the lobby. And Fugitive is about, the fear of a slave who escapes not being about the whip of the master or the control, but rather the darkness and not knowing what's beyond the gates, And Yuki begins her commentary on that by saying, as a formerly human trafficked person, this is how the poem made me feel. And Yuki is a transgender Japanese woman, man, identifies as being a man, who at 13 was human trafficked from Japan to here, and now lives in the Tenderloin, has lived in the Tenderloin for years. And Sue is a 80-year-old Chinese woman of Hakka descent who's lived in the Tenderloin for years and leads the Tenderloin Chinese Rights Association, which we saw, on display that Friday night. It's a third of the auditorium, and they are about a third of the Tenderloin, which I did not know until recently. But Sue is such a force of nature in the way she approaches the neighborhood, the Chinese Rights Association, and life. And they, after meeting them that Sunday morning afterwards, I parked up on Larkin and Post and walked down the hill. And that was the first time I felt totally at home in the Tenderloin. And I've felt increasingly so since that time. And it only took 4 years, Yeah, so those are my two people, but
that's awesome. I think mine is probably Jaime Sanchez.
I thought you were going to say Jaime.
Yeah. Joaquin Slowly is his transvestite name. And local guy, lives here in the Tenderloin. Very interesting. He'd probably not super happy that I was talking about him. He likes to lay low behind the scenes. And he has a military background and had done some tours. And, PTSD issues and kind of assimilating back into society is obviously a challenge for many of our men and women in the military. And he came to one of those first events that we had here with Han Min, and I remember him, and we let him do. He does some performance pieces and stuff, if you remember, and really can break down a crowd and get people to come together, which is fun. And then one time, surprisingly, he said, "Man, your guys' hallway is awful. Going back to where our fitness room is and to the back. What's the backyard now?" I'm like, "Yeah, we need to do something back here." And he said, "If you pay for my paint and you give me a space, I'll paint it." And he said, "I just need a space to do my," basically he treats it as therapy, And he takes his time and he does it, and it's become one of the favorite spots in the hotel for guests to take pictures by, and people are blown away by it. And like I mentioned, if we sell anything, then it goes back to the artist. Well, he takes whatever he sells and he puts it back into nonprofits here in the neighborhood. So just a super great guy, and it was super surprising that came about the way it did. And he loves our staff. They all know him. They'll come in, sometimes at midnight, 1 a.m, and he's like, "Hey guys, I'm gonna come paint," and they all chat, and it's really cool.
Talk about the tank tops that he made.
Yeah, he. So in the back, there's sections in the hallway, and each section has a different theme. One are little boxes that, if you stand back and kind of look, it's the hills of San Francisco. There's the heart wall, kites, and so he had tank tops made of each one of those, and some of them are even 3D. And so that's one of the things that he sells, is the tank tops of those pieces. And he's working on some coffee mugs that when you fill them up with the hot water, they change to the hearts or whatever, and then as it cools back off, it turns black again. So pretty neat.
Very neat.
Yeah.
Very neat. Jason, I'm going to turn it over to you now and just let you ask any questions you'd like.
Yeah, let's stay on Tenderloin and Tilden topic a little bit.
Okay.
What kind of drew you to this property initially, and I'm sure, as an investor, like what brought you here?
Yeah, I was quite inspired by its location. Taylor Street, if you walk the length of Taylor, you'll walk through, I think, one of the main arteries of the city, because it goes through Soma, Tenderloin. You've got the Bohemian Club on it. Go through Nob Hill, Pack Heights, or Russian Hill-ish, and Chinatown, all the way down to Fisherman's Wharf. And that's been a pretty good story of like the neighborhoods that I've been sort of a part of, and feel a part of. Han Min's house is just down Taylor on Pacific, and first hotel I bought in San Francisco was the Tuscan, which is Mason and North Point, just a block off Taylor also. And it was, I think I saw a lot of potential in the lobby and this restaurant, and turned that space into a cafe, because it had really not been done before in San Francisco, where people wanted to hang out in a lobby. And that was my first, plan with the hotel. And then since buying it, it's really evolved into making the Tilden a sanctuary of sorts. We chose to name it after this blind, deaf, sculptor, Douglas Tilden, and who had made art in the Tenderloin. And the idea of misfits, coming together in San Francisco and doing amazing work, right, has always intrigued me. And that's been, I think, a theme of the city, from Steve Jobs back to Season of the Witch, 70s, and then back to the Fisherman, Gold Rush, and the Tenderloin is like the last part of that. But I think most tourists coming to the Tenderloin are simply, their nervous systems won't allow them to see past what's right in front of them, and my hope is that this hotel can be a sanctuary to those travelers, so they can feel at peace, feel a sense of connection, and see the beauty that you and I have gotten a chance to see, in people like Jaime and Sue and Yuki. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And for the art piece, because you've really helped push that and supported that too. So how do you tie that into kind of what we do?
Yeah, if you look at my son, Tyler is now studying the rise and fall of different civilizations over the years, and I think he's starting with Sparta, and Sparta's a great example of what the world looks like without art, and a pretty masculine dominated society, and the Renaissance shows you what can happen, with art, right? Great commerce, great culture. I think Han Min has eloquently stated perhaps my life's purpose, which is to define, manifest culture through business. And so, through meeting these artists and understanding their message, the Tilden is a little bit of a blank canvas, if you will, or a billboard for their messages, and to articulate what the Tenderloin means to them, and what the artist's vision, what they see that we might not see every day living here. And it's such a vivid picture of what the Tenderloin can be, or maybe what it is if you can see past its surface. I don't think many tourists coming to the Tenderloin would tell you that, oh, it was the highlight of my trip,
right?
Or I really got a sense of real San Francisco through the Tenderloin, But I think with some of the ideas that you and I have shared about this meeting room in the back becoming more of a sanctuary and a display of some of the artifacts, moving beyond the art and letting some of the more organized and formed communities display things in there, I think that's really powerful. And I'm hopeful that this podcast reaches some listeners that tune into that, because it's an important part of our city, particularly at this point in time. I think San Francisco has a voice in the world, and people that listen, I think will get a lot out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always thought of art as a lens or a mirror,
Yes.
In high school, I took AP Western Civilization.
Yeah.
And the entire class was on art and what the art was at the time period that we were talking about. And, there's history books, and then you could see what, and tie those together.
Yeah.
And I kind of see it that way here too.
Yeah.
And some of it maybe is trying to tell a future as well.
Yeah. I think it is. I think that's what Han Min's purpose with it is.
Yep.
Yeah. You want to talk about us taking that wall down?
Sure. That was fun. And lots of levels. I think that was a good thing. So for the
what
listeners,
levels? Yeah.
for the listeners, the Douglas Room, we took over management in March 25th, and there was that archway there between the restaurant and the lobby, and the idea always has been to make the bar part of the lobby and vice versa, make it feel like people can sit in the lobby and have a drink, hang out, sit in the Douglas Room and do the same. So one Sunday, Steve and I just decided, let's take some hammers and sawzall and knock this thing down. So we did.
A week of planning.
About a week. And we did, and that was awesome.
Yeah.
And I had fun doing it with you, and the staff thought it was really cool. I've heard so many people say how cool they think that is, that the owner and the GM of a hotel would come in and do that, and and just the change that it's made, though, from people who walk in and feeling more comfortable, knowing that it's there, and then symbolically too, just bringing the spaces together.
Yeah.
It both physically and symbolically did. It just kind of cleaned that out.
Yeah, and then we hit our first break-even month of the restaurant.
Yeah,
after 2.5 years.
We're doing it.
That month.
We're doing it, and and the staff loves it too. It just brings the two teams together.
Yeah.
It's it kind of symbolically, it's like you took the wall that was between these two groups of people.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah.
And makes it easier to talk to somebody if you stare across the bar at the front desk at each other all night.
Right. Right. So, building on that image of a wall or any symbology there, can you talk about, if there's a picture in your mind of what you'd like to be remembered as, what that looks like?
Wow. I think, having a kid now, being a good dad and husband is probably the most important thing to me. Being remembered as that. And then I think probably the second is just being a genuine person. Like, I try not to hide behind things.
Yeah.
Try to live my life that way as much as I can. And, work hard, be genuine, make as best decisions you can.
Yeah.
Get through life, I think that's probably. How about yourself?
Well, I'm going to wrap it up, and
yeah,
I won't answer the question now, but I'll tell you later.
Okay.
And Jason, thanks for taking time out of your
Yeah,
day.
thank you.
And for bringing all your good energy to this conversation and everything that you've done for the hotel.
Awesome.
It's really meaningful work you've done here, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sure all these listeners will too. Thanks, Jason.
Yep. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.